The focus will turn a lot more in the next 6 months to opposition policy, as you know. In your immigration space, we've seen the government fail to hit its targets. But what measures will you introduce to hit a net migration target that Peter Dutton has spoken about of 160,000 a year, about half what it is now? Who will you exclude from net migration and permanent migration to hit the promises that Mr Dutton has made?
Well, we'll outline all that in our policy in the lead up to the election. At the moment, what we're focused on, though, is that the government's absolute failure to be able to rein in immigration at the moment. Over 1 million people in a 2-year period during a housing crisis, during a rental crisis, and we know that their net overseas migration target of 395,000 for the last financial year isn't going to be met.
All right.
So we're trying to help and support the government dealing.
Let me just pull you up on that, though, because I did ask about your approach. 190,000 to 140,000 a year permanent migration, and as you just said, 395,000 net migration down to 160. That's going to require some drastic change, isn't it? Will we see less family reunion migration under a coalition government? Will we see less skilled migration, but you'll be looking for skills in certain areas like construction? Will we see even tighter caps on foreign students in your policy?
Well, we'll set all that out, but Andrew, you've got to remember, we don't know what we'll be dealing with. So, for instance, we've been trying to work with the government about putting student caps in place. Now, that legislation, they wouldn't even bring it in for a vote in the Senate last week, and that would make a big start in properly regulating when it comes to international students, who's coming into the country, and in particular, and this is where the government has really failed with their focus, who is leaving the country. You know, the idea about temporary migration is that students come in and then they leave. Some highly skilled students you would want to make sure that you can keep to grow your economy and to grow your nation. So we will work through all this, but the trouble is Labor have made such a mess of immigration. We don't know where we'll be starting from at this stage. So we will detail our policies. We've already detailed some of them, and we will continue to detail those going forward in the lead up to
just
the
briefly,
next election.
do you have
such a mess of it?
Dan Tehan, do you have in your mind now a family reunion number, a skilled number? You've obviously announced a humanitarian number for your migration program that you want.
Well, we can't at the moment, Andrew, because we don't know how big the mess is going to be that we're going to.
But you've announced a global number.
We've got a good sense of that.
You've announced a global number, so you must have some idea, don't you?
Well, we have announced a global number. We're doing the work. What the most important thing is that you're doing the work on what are the policies which will enable you to achieve that. And what we've got to do is make sure, for instance, at the moment, we're seeing a lot of people, an increasing number of people, claiming asylum. So one of the things, for instance, that the government announced through Christine Nixon's policy review is some ways to deal with that. Now, we've said we support those, yet the government hasn't implemented. So we will outline clear policies which will enable us to get where we need to get to.
So you'd like to deport. Dan Tehan, you'd like to deport more people who are claiming asylum. Is that right?
But what we want to do is actually put stricter guidelines in place which would prevent it or make it harder for people to be able to claim asylum, because you've got to remember, Andrew, over 80% of the people that do it are found not to be owed protection. Now, you can put in place processes. For instance, the Christine Nixon review said you could look at using lawyers, so you would have to do your claims through lawyers. So that way the lawyers would then be able to say to the applicant, sorry, this doesn't add up, you shouldn't apply for it. So there are simple things you could do here which the government just aren't doing.
I've got to move on.
They've made such a mess of immigration.
Got to move on, Dan Tehan.